Over to Debbie. She can introduce the next speakers.
Hi, Laura, that was fantastic. I am absolutely in awe of what you're doing with the microbits. Honestly, that was amazing. So our next guests, everybody, is Pamela and Ben, and they're from Morrison's Academy, and they're going to be talking about how to go about demystifying project-based learning, and it's work that they've been doing in the curriculum when they're working with outside partners to deliver the computing science outcomes, and it sounds absolutely fantastic.
Hi Debbie, thank you. I think we're just waiting on the slideshow. Is Brendan going to broadcast? Lovely, thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. It's been fascinating listening so far to some of the ideas. I've certainly been making some notes, and that just means more work for Ben and I tomorrow. I'm sure you all know that feeling. Lots of enthusiasm, lots of great ideas. Tonight, what we want to do is we want to talk to you a little bit about the journey that we've been on with regards to computing science, and particularly at that broad general education stage where we have been looking specifically at S1 and S2 this year, but looking to move that back to P6 and P7 certainly next year. Where we've come from is we've come from a background where, like many schools, we now have devices in the hands of all of our students. So one-to-one deployment in our primary school and bring your own device in our senior school, which has opened up all sorts of opportunities for our students and has allowed us to develop a whole school digital curriculum. So once we got there, we finally reached that mountain that I felt like I've been climbing for the last 20 years of. Now that computing science can focus on computing science, what do we do? How do we get more girls involved in computing science? How do we make it link more to the modern workplace? And it was time to perhaps think there a little bit differently about what we were going, how we were going to deliver that in those early S1 and S2 years. So I'm not sure how I go about, sorry, you see I say these things and then, no, there we go, button. So firstly, just a word of introduction about who we are. My name's Pamela Boal. I'm the Director of Digital Strategy, a very grand job title that basically means that I do all things computing, including teaching computing science. So I'm a computing science teacher of 20 years experience. During that time, I have worked on lots of different projects, including working with SQA on curriculum development, and as part of that. And then there's my younger colleague, Ben, he'll like me saying that this evening, who we're not going to hold it against him, but he's actually a physics teacher to trade. And before that, he had a job in finance, but actually he's quite dynamic. It's quite surprising when you hear these things about him. He's been teaching for 3 or 4 years now, I should know that, sorry Ben, and he joined us as a STEM innovator with a view to developing a STEM curriculum from our P1 years, but because of timetabling, he also ended up teaching some computing science, which was very much my gain and led to his thinking a little bit differently about things.
Yeah, thanks, Pamela. So, as Pam said, my background is senior school physics. At the moment, I'm actually teaching P1 right the way through to S2. So I'm actually teaching a huge range of different abilities and ages. For the purposes of this, we're really talking about upper primary and lower secondary. So really P7, S1 and S2. I think it's probably worth defining what we mean by project-based learning, because there's lots of different concepts, lots of different ideas. From our point of view, project-based learning is really, it's group work, but it's not just group work. So we're not throwing kids into groups of 3, 4, telling them to fill in a worksheet and then forgetting about it afterwards. It's really about getting the kids into groups and then giving them a task to complete. Drawing on cross-curricular skills, so we're looking at bringing in maths, a bit of English, teaching science and computer science. I try and bring a lot of science there as well. Our projects span multiple lessons. So we normally talk about a project that will last either a half term or a full term. But we do want to see the children normally once or twice a week, which means we don't actually see them very often, but we do try and kind of make the projects last a little bit longer. Each project normally has an end goal. So a bit like Laura was talking about with a lot of the microbit work, and we use microbits as well, actually. We tend to have a target that the children need to work towards, but we try and keep it quite open-ended, even though there's a target there. It's very much assessed through formative assessment rather than summative assessment. We look at skills, we look at observations in the class, and then we have a rubric of how the children have produced their final work. And we try to promote creativity. That's one of the big things about project-based learning. We're trying to get the kids to buy into the work themselves, and we're trying to get them to kind of want to do the work, I suppose, and inspire them to find their own path in computer science. And we very much operate a flipped classroom where we will give the core information, the core coding and programming skills, and then we'll pass it over to the children in their groups, and they will kind of lead the learning in the direction that each group finds most interesting. But most importantly, more than anything else, we try to make the projects inclusive, because we have a very wide range of abilities and backgrounds, and we try to make it so that children from all different skills and backgrounds and interests can get involved. And that's what we're trying to do in these projects, is get people who wouldn't normally like computer science and people who wouldn't normally buy into it to really start enjoying it, I suppose. We can go to the next slide. Looks like we can. I'll start out. There we are. So Pamela kind of went into the reasons we started looking at this, but we, as well as engaging the children, we also have to make sure it kind of fit with the sound pedagogy and how it would kind of support the children. And I've got a lot of things on here, but I think the one to focus on is the 7 principles of design of the curriculum for excellence, because project-based learning, in my opinion, kind of ties quite nicely into this. If you look at challenge, depth of knowledge, and personalization and choice, project-based learning is perfect for this, because the children can really push themselves, or you as a teacher can kind of push them to kind of go really deep into one aspect of the topic. And we'll talk about some projects that we do in a second. And you can get the children to really focus on either the marketing and how to make really good quality videos, or how to do the programming, how to debug other people's work. So you can really focus on one area. And the children tend to do that themselves. If they find something they enjoy, they really do the work outside of the classroom as well. So giving the children personalization and choice kind of fits into the challenge and the depth, because children want to learn for themselves. As well as that, you've got breadth and relevance, a really easy one. Project-based learning, because you draw on lots of different skills. So you're using your maths, using computer science, bit of science. It's a really easy way to kind of do cross-curricular work if you have the buy-in of other departments. The one that we found most challenging, and we're still working on, is progression and coherence. And we are working on a way of kind of combining P1 all the way through to S2 in one progressive and coherent curriculum. Because we want the children to start learning skills early on and then develop those skills as they go through their learning journey. And that's something we are still working at. We think we've made progress, but there's still a lot of way before we have the project-based learning in a coherent and progressive framework. So Pamela and I will both cover a few of our projects that we've covered quickly, just to give you an idea of what we've been up to.
So the Open UK Kids course is a personal favourite of mine. I was lucky enough to be approached by Open UK to ask to work alongside them as a curriculum advisor to develop a new course of 10 lessons, working with a professional animator and voiceover artist to develop short lessons that could be carried out at home during lockdown initially. And a glove was developed. It was originally the Minimoo glove, but that's now been taken in-house by Open UK themselves, and that fitted the microbit. And the idea was that pupils were given different topics. In this case, you'll see on screen, there is the light glove, and then they learn to code. Now, this is specifically aimed at level 3. So we looked at making sure all of the level 3 outcomes in coding in Make Code were actually considered as part of that. So those lessons themselves are each small projects that can be completed in individuals or in groups. There are 10 of them, which is quite a lot of time from the computing science e-zine, and they're all accompanied by the e-zine, which has I write a page in each of them about computing science concepts, but there are also industrial professionals. There are some fun quizzes that can be used as extension tasks. And that then leads nicely into developing a really good sound level of coding to allow them to go into an invention using design thinking. So I'm not sure if these links will work. No, they won't. It's okay. But the idea here with design thinking is we went through the process of actually coming up with an idea, of designing that, of building a prototype, and then of sharing that story with the rest of the class and presenting their ideas. And we had some absolutely fabulous ideas. We had a tie-tying glove that taught you how to tie your tie, which was really useful and engaging. We had a glove that reminded you to do certain things at certain times that was aimed at people who were perhaps neurodiverse and struggled with organisation, or older people with dementia. The kids came up with some really great ideas, and seeing the prototyping of those gloves was a bit difficult, watching some of my gloves being cut apart at points, but some of the things that they did with them, like putting mesh inside and designing, was really, really creative and allowed them to take real ownership of that process. That kids course is available for free. If you just type Open UK Kids course into Google, there are two. Course 1 is mapped against level 3, and course 2 is mapped against level 4. So that one is well worth a little bit of a look at, and it's one that we're always open to feedback on, and we'll continue to develop that resource for schools.
Someone was on mute. Yeah, so the next one we looked at was Apps for Good, and this was it's probably one of my favourite ones that we did, to be honest, because we kind of combined a bit of computer science and empathy, and trying to get children to think about their social awareness and social justice, which is a really nice kind of combination, I think, which is not something you normally think of, maybe when you think of computer science. And it brought in a whole different kind of group of people who were really interested. The basics of Apps for Good, and we've got the link at the bottom of the slides there, so you can see the cost for yourself. You don't need a lot of resources for it. It's all online. Use code.org for App Lab, which is the software you use to design your apps. You can do that in text or block-based coding, so it's nice for a variety of different learners. The idea was we put the children into groups. They had to think of problems that other people in the world faced, or problems that we were facing as a society. As a group, they then voted and chose one of those problems to focus on. They brainstormed how to fix the problem, and looked at how computer science and apps and technology could help alleviate the issue or kind of completely fix it. They then designed a company around this. So they designed a company and an app and a full interface of how the software would work. Very similar to, I think it was the first presentation we had today. I think that was quite a similar kind of idea to this. And then once they started designing the company, they split into specialist groups. So we had like a project leader, we had a technical person who would do more of the programming, we had a marketing team who would think about how you would sell the app to other people and how to make a good presentation. We didn't have time to do the full project. So this project was really supposed to be 30 lessons, and we found one lesson a week. Children just don't have the buy-in to focus for 30 lessons over 30 weeks. So we decided to cut it down to about 7 or 8 lessons, which just brought it a little bit tighter together, and it kept the children a little bit more engaged. After they designed and built their app, they then had to present it to a Dragon's Den style group. This year, because of time constraints, it was just Dragon's Den internally amongst the school. But the idea is in the future, we'll hopefully get some experts in. They can present their ideas to computer science professionals or someone in industry. And some some of the ideas were fantastic. I mean, we had things like apps to tell you if you've got a disabled parking space nearby. There was ones for voting to decide how council money is spent on social projects. And it was a really good project to see how different groups of people thought and what was important to them. So it was a really nice idea to just bring everybody together and apply computer science for social good, I suppose.
So this one is one that I enjoyed, but it's certainly on the more demanding side of the academic spectrum. So Amazon Young Engineer put together a course called Your Voice is Power, YVIP for short, and it uses a piece of software called EarSketch, which our S2 boys absolutely fell in love with, and that's quite an achievement for any piece of software. So essentially what you're going to do is you do music production and mixing using Python code. Now, at first, I was a little bit, that's quite a lot in there, but actually what I found was quite quickly, they worked through tutorials to learn how to do certain things. They looked at, if they wanted to find out how to add a special effect, they'd go off and watch a YouTube video, and they really started to extend their learning very, very quickly. This very quickly involved loops, it involved functions, and both predefined and writing your own functions as well became part of it for some who were pushing themselves at the more able end. But just this whole concept of actually mixing music was one that they really enjoyed. So the EarSketch software is one that I would really recommend. Particularly if you're looking for an intro to Python, that's going to be quite engaging for your students. I didn't foresee a world in which I'd be talking about parameter passing to a group of S2 boys, but actually that's what happened. They pushed and they really wanted to see to expand because they were focused on the product. Great, glad to see you enjoyed that too, David. That they were focused on the product rather than necessarily the code learning, but the code learning was happening and they were able to tell me what was going on. And one of the very last lessons is on internal commentary. And I was asking them just to comment in what was happening at each stage so I could see the thought process. And there was real understanding going on there too. So that's another one that I would recommend.
Yeah, it's probably worth noting a lot of these projects you could probably bring down to upper primary. I'd say the Amazon one was probably one that is definitely a secondary based kind of project. It was a little bit more challenging. The kids really loved it. The last one I want to mention is Crest Awards, which a lot of you have probably heard of. So the Crest Awards are awards across all the sciences, engineering, technology. I think there's some art in there as well. There's quite a lot of different topics. We've decided we were offering some Crest Awards in science, and now we've decided to try and bake it into the curriculum. So from P1 all the way through to S6, we are offering Crest Awards. From P1 to S2 or S1, we are offering it as part of the curriculum, and then from S1 right through to S6, it's an optional thing that the children can do in their own time. And at P1 to 3, we're doing the STAR Award, which is kind of introducing scientific concepts. P4 to 6, P4 to 7, we're looking at Superstar, which is a little bit more complex. Discovery is currently S1. We're still kind of debating whereabouts in P7 to S1 it kind of stands, because there's lots of different things you can add in there. And the project we've done this year is machine learning. So with ChatGPT and other AI things coming out this year, it's been a really relevant kind of project that we've been doing, where the children had to design some AI kind of products for themselves. Again, setting up a mini company. I saw someone mention before about apps for good and how it would be good to link it to business. And that's something we're hoping to do next year as well, because a lot of these projects require you to give strong presentations, to require you to think about your product as a product and as part of a business. And this is a little bit different with the Crest Award, because whilst we started looking at AI design, this was really more about how you can kind of get more involved in your own projects and kind of adapt things for your own needs. This one was not a programming-based project, but it did have a lot of the other skills in there. We're really looking to use this as a springboard to kind of inspire people to do the bronze and possibly even the silver awards in S1, S2, S3. Gold's a little bit more complex, 70 hours. We haven't really got anyone that far yet, but it's definitely worth considering looking at Crest Awards, not just in the secondary, but in the primary sphere as well, and how it can kind of, I suppose, tie in the curriculum all the way through without having to rewrite the whole curriculum. So it's definitely something we found useful for kind of engaging the children across a wider age range.
Okay, so the last project is one that I'm going to talk about, but I'm very much going to blame on Ben, and I don't think either of us could have foreseen where this would go. So we had quite a frank discussion at the start of last year about homework and about homework's place within the curriculum, about the time spent chasing homework, all of the things that teachers normally talk about. And what we decided was actually at this stage, instead of giving out regular homework, what we really wanted to do was to enrich the pupils' learning and to really get them to follow their own passions and their own things. So in term 2, we give them roughly 8 to 10 weeks to work on a project of their own time at home. And we called it Technology Behind. And the idea was that they went off and they researched the technology behind something. So we had technology behind missiles. We had the technology behind Pokemon Go. Really interesting, actually, I discovered. We had the technology behind keyboards. One child was incredibly interested in that and created a fantastic video. And what we asked them to do was either to create a research-based poster, a video, a 3D model, virtual or real life, or animation. So our PowerPoint presentation wasn't an option. We really wanted them to explore different ways of actually presenting information because they do presentations in so many areas of the school. Some of the results we saw we could never have foreseen. We had one boy who took apart a VR headset and told us how it worked. We had one girl who made a scratch animation of how GPS worked, and we had another very much Snapchat style video that was short about music technology and how it worked. There was a fantastic poster on smartphones and how they work that was actually designed like a smartphone. And the kids really, really engaged with all of that. And actually, we spent ages looking at these. It took us a while to mark them. I think we underestimated how long it would actually take us to mark them, when 120 landed on our desks at the same time. We were sort of like, oh my goodness. But actually just seeing what they had done was really inspiring for us, because they put in the time, and pupils who we wouldn't normally expect, when they were really engaged with the topic, really took it a stage further and beyond. And there was also the opportunity to check in with us regularly and just tell us about what's going on with some things. So we were really, I was really excited by this one. It was a bit unexpected. I don't think we could have expected the things that happened when we began, but with a little bit of persuasion, they actually probably learned far more than they would have from a weekly homework exercise set by us in the vast majority of cases. We also gave the option of maybe coming in at lunchtime. Not all pupils have the same level of support at home, so the classroom door is always open. They know that, and some popped in to ask about getting started, borrow resources, whatever it might be, to get some help with that one as well. Right. Sorry, I'm using the wrong mouse. Okay.
I'm very conscious of time, so I'll run through this quickly. But look, we've talked about project-based learning. It'd be remiss not to look at the challenges, because it's not an easy thing to implement straight away. It is a big step away from the curriculum that a lot of people, including ourselves, were using. And there's quite a lot of challenges on here. Some of them speak for themselves. Resources was one that we're quite fortunate we weren't struggling too far with, but you need to make sure you have the equipment available. So things with basics like your paper tape, whiteboards. We found movable whiteboards on wheels for each group was actually very useful for the children to kind of lay their ideas out. Somewhere to store the work, so the space that I've written on there, somewhere to store your resources is absolutely vital. And that's the one we're still working through lots of different ideas, lots of different IKEA solutions. We've not found one which works perfectly yet because you never know what the children will build. But it is something to think about, is where you're going to store these projects before you start, because once they start getting built, you really need to keep them safe and protected. Also, we've got one-to-one devices which just help all the way through the school. So if you don't have this, I'd say project-based learning is actually a really good way of getting around it, because you don't need one device per child, you need one per group necessarily, which makes it a little bit easier to do. The big one I'd say in all of these, I've got the star next to it on my piece of paper, is routines. Get the children into good routines early on. So they come to the classroom, there's no downtime, they know exactly what's expected, who's working with who, have all the information available really quickly. We use Google Classroom, so the children come in, they can log into their computers, all the information is on there, all the links are on there, videos they need, and they can quickly get started. And then at the end of the lesson, they know where to put their projects. And having those routines saves you immeasurable amounts of time. I'm going to skip through a few of these, but two ones I think are very important: inclusion of all pupils. Give pupils tasks or job titles in their groups. It really helps include everybody, because there's always some children who are more confident and some who are quieter, and giving each pupil a specific role really helps with the quieter pupils coming out of the shell. And it's amazing how they get into the roles. If you have the same roles every single time, but you can also swap the person doing that role, it really, really helps. The last one I've got here, and Pamela will go into this as well, evidence in learning. I think this is one of the things a lot of teachers are worried about, is how do we show the children are learning things, and how do we show HMIE that the children are actually doing things. We tried to use paper-based resources this year. It didn't really work in a way where we could show the kind of progress per child. It's not something I'm really big on anyway. I'm really big on kind of the children being able to demonstrate things rather than writing it down on a piece of paper. But we're looking at doing Google Classroom portfolios next year, and hopefully keeping it all online will be an easy way to keep track of the work across multiple projects. So I'm going to pass you over to Pamela for the last slide very quickly.
Okay, I'll speak very, very quickly in terms of where do we go now. So firstly, we need to review project content. We're aware that some of the projects are perhaps too long, others are perhaps too short. I'm not sure who it was that said to me, it may well be one of the computing teachers on this call, but it takes 3 years to really embed anything. Year 1 to try it, Year 2 to review it, and Year 3 to really get it right. So we're still in Year 2 next year, so some review going on. Looking at evidence of learning in terms of marking rubrics. So if I had more time, I'd say more, but we've got to move away if we're going to take this approach from the 1 mark for this, 0 marks for this exam style marking. That is very much the case in SQA years and beyond, and look much more holistically at skills and at what level pupils are developing those skills. Something I've learned from having a primary teacher, almost as a colleague, is that is really important. Portfolio, I don't have time, but we are developing a portfolio that has all of the E's and O's and the benchmarks. And the idea there is that we'll drop in images of pupils working, images of the pupils' work, and that's going to become part of our end of class routine each time, telling them what to put where, so that we develop a rich portfolio of learning. I could speak about that on its own, really. And then finally, we want to add industrial links to each or higher education into each project, so that they actually speak to someone that's out there in the real world doing it. We're a very small rural school in central Scotland, and people don't come to us often because it takes at least an hour to get to us from the city. But with everything we learned during the lockdowns, we can now have people drop in virtually. So I'll keep that brief because I'm aware we're a minute over time. Our details are on the next slide. We are happy to share any resources or any questions that you might have at any point. Just send one of us an email and we'll certainly get back to you on that.
Thank you so much, Pamela. That is amazing. I cannot believe that you've got children taking about part of VR systems. Hope it's not Oculus, right enough. I've noticed we've got a couple of questions here for you. So Heather was wondering, do you have any projects that you'd be willing to share for people to get some ideas?
Yes. So all of the projects that we mentioned tonight are freely available. So we have not developed these. That's the real beauty in this. We've taken work that other people have done, but what we'd be more than happy to do is to share a document with the relevant links, because often finding them is actually the hardest part, and we can share marking rubrics we've put together for each of them as well. So more than happy to do that.
Oh, that is absolutely so kind of you. And I'm just looking at what Quentin said here. So given some of these were project-based, do you see some excelling more than others, and how can you ensure all of them are developing the basics?
So for us, that's perhaps a little bit easier than most. We're working with class sizes of 15 to 20. So we know our pupils relatively well. Ben has often taught them from P1 to transitional. In fact, test 2, he's taught some of them for a long time eventually, hopefully. So what we'll have there is a situation where it's just about knowing your pupils. And we know that as teachers, and looking at what each of them are doing individually. In your classroom, you become a facilitator. You're more of an observer. We see pupils who are struggling, and we sit down and go over the basics with them, maybe individually. You're very much not a teacher behind a desk. You're at the group sitting with your kids working on different things, and each of them produces a level of individual evidence and understanding just naturally as part of the project journey. And yes, some do excel more than others. Some really, really take on a leadership role and push their own abilities. So yeah, absolutely.
It's probably also worth mentioning that the first time you do the project, you will certainly, we found that some pupils really excelled and other ones were maybe a little bit quieter. It takes a while to kind of spot when a child looks like they're busy when they're not busy, because some kids are very, very good at pretending they're doing more work than they are. So it takes a few projects before you can actually get used to what to look for and things like that, and understand when a child's really putting the work in or when they're struggling.
Thanks, Pamela. Thanks, Ben. Really good. I think we all need to move more towards that sort of thing. And certainly if you've read the assessment reform documents, there's a big bit in there about assessment project-based work.